Double die, double struck, same thing, right? Actually, a double die and a double struck are absolutely completely different things. And to clear up some of the confusion that I have people ask me about on a daily basis, today we're going to talk about doubled stuff on coins. It's not nearly as simple as most people think it is. Today I'm going to help you make heads and tails of different types of doubled coins. The first mistake a lot of people make is they lump double strike and double die coins into the same context of an error coin. Although they are both kind of an error, they're not the same. When collectors talk about error coins, they're usually talking about something that happens to a particular coin or a group of coins during the minting process. It's something that goes wrong in the production of that particular coin. Double struck is exactly what it sounds like. The coin was literally struck twice. You can have different types of double struck coins. You can have a flip over like this. You can have a saddle strike like this one. You can have one that really didn't move and just rotated like this one, and so on and so forth. There are different things that can happen to that particular coin as it's being struck to have it receive a second strike. Although it usually doesn't, this could in theory happen to just one single coin, making it a unique thing. And that's because errors are unique events that happen to a coin during its production process. And although there might be a few or even a lot of other errors just like it, each error coin will be in some way unique. But a double die is not unique at all. In fact, if you find a really strong, unique double die, that most likely means it's not actually a double die. Let me explain. It's not called a double die because it's catchy and just kind of rolls off the tongue. It's called a double die because it is literally a doubled die. It is technically a type of mint production error, but it's not an error that happens in the production of the coin, but it's an error that happens in the production of that particular die that made that coin. And most collectors of double dies and people familiar with the topic do not refer to them as errors. Instead, they're called varieties because it's a variation or a deviation from the normal design of the particular coin on a particular die. So pretty much it's a design error on one particular die that makes coins. And because it's a design mistake on the die itself that makes the coins, every single coin struck by that die will have the same design mistake on it. This is what a die looks like that makes a coin. And as you can see from the pictures, the lettering is both incuse, meaning it is cut into the die, and it's also reversed. So when a coin planchet is struck by that die, it will leave a raised design facing the right direction so you can actually read what's on the coin. In the US Mint, the thing that makes a coin die is something called a hub. A hub is pretty much kind of like a die, and it has the normal image of the coin just like it would look like on the actual coin, raised and readable, and that hub is squeezed into a piece of metal that's going to become that die, leaving that reverse and incuse design. Well, up until more recently, to make sure the die is really well struck out, the mint would do a multiple squeeze process of making a die, where literally they would squeeze that hub and that die together and then do it again. And sometimes more than just 2 times to make sure the die actually has all of the design on it. Anytime you try to perfectly line up something twice, sometimes things go wrong. And that's literally what a double die is. It's an error at that point in the process where the hub is being used to make one of the many dies that's going to be used for circulating coins, but something didn't quite line up right, and now we have something that's doubled. So yeah, the coins struck by that die are doubled, but that's because the die itself is doubled, hence the name double die. Since it's the actual die that's doubled, every single coin struck by that die will have, for the most part, the exact same doubling on it. And I say for the most part because as the die is used over and over and over to make coins, it's going to wear, it's going to deteriorate, and mint employees are going to be polishing that die to make sure they can get as much life out of it as they possibly can, so the visibility of some doubling from certain double dies might not be as visible in the later usage of that die as it was in the earlier coins struck by that die. But nonetheless, all of the coins struck by that particular die will have that particular doubling on it, which is why I said that if you find a really strong, unique coin that you think is a double die, it's most likely not, because there should be other examples of that exact same double die from the other coins that were struck by the die that made the coin that you have in your hand. I know there are people out there who could be very frustrated because you've got a coin, you can see the doubling on it, it's clear as day, but it doesn't match any of the double dies that are known. And that's because not all doubling is the same. There are different types of doubling that can happen on a coin apart from simply a double struck or a double die. The most infamous of these is called machine doubling, and it is the bane of new double die searchers' existence. It's a very prevalent, normal, and worthless thing to happen to a coin. Machine doubling has nothing to do with a double die, and it's more akin to a double struck, but not really. Machine doubling happens from the bounce in the die as it strikes the coin, and it moving and shifting some of that metal. And it creates a shelf-like doubling on some or possibly even all of the design elements on a coin. And it can be really small or really big, but it's just a normal and very frequently seen issue that happens on a coin, just way too commonly found. Another type of doubling found on coins is known as deterioration doubling. Deterioration doubling is exactly what it sounds like. It's actually doubling that does happen to a die, but not because of the making of the die, but because of constant wear to a die over time. And there's only one example of die deterioration doubling that's even worth anything. I really don't think it should be worth anything, but there's something called the 1955 Poor Man's Double Die. And basically because there's an actual really nice double die in 1955 that everybody wants, but it's expensive and a little scarce, people go for this die deterioration doubling called the 1955 Poor Man's Double Die as kind of a cheap filler for a spot in an album where they wouldn't be able to put an actual 55 double die obverse. Now these collectors could go for one of the other actual double die obverses on 1955 cents, but since those are harder to spot and more obscure, the gimmicky 1955 Poor Man's Double Die has remained as something that actually sells for more than it ever should. It's just die deterioration doubling where the lettering is spreading out from the constant movement of metal through immense repeated pressure that these dies are undergoing throughout the course of their life. And you'll notice it as kind of a spreading out of the design towards the rim of the coin usually. There's no collectability in deterioration doubling apart from that 1955 Poor Man's Double Die because it's a normal portion of the die's lifespan. So the Poor Man's Double Die was not struck by a particular die. There are many dies that deteriorated in 1955 to produce the Poor Man's Double Dies, and that's why there are so many of them out there versus the 1955 actual double die, which is actually scarce and valuable. Now, having seen die deterioration doubling and machine doubling, you'll notice that both of those are kind of a spreading out of material that's already in a certain place on the design of the coin. Machine doubling is literally just a shelf-like spreading of that metal, and deterioration doubling is literally a spreading of the metal on the die that just gets filled in by the metal on the coin. But once again, a double die is completely different. Because a double die is made in the hubbing process, where the die is actually made because of a misalignment of different squeezes of that hub to that die, it's not a spreading out of the design that's already on the die. It is literally a second impression of that design onto that die. Now, in the way of like Lincoln cents, this is most prevalently seen on stuff like the 1955 double die obverse, the 1969 S double die obverse. Several of the 1972 double dies are extremely strong as well. I could go on for a while with just cents alone: 1936, 1917, 1941, 1970 S, 1971 S. But to spare you the misery of me just listing the major double dies in one single denomination of US coins, Lincoln cents, let's suffice it to say that there are a lot of them, and there are ones in every single denomination that are strong. And the strong ones aren't the ones that are really hard to distinguish, because the doubling should match exactly, because they were both struck by the exact same die. But for however many really strong double dies there are so many more lesser and even really minor double dies out there. Some of those are desirable, but honestly, most of them not so much because of the fact that they are pretty small and not very visible. But those are the ones that a lot of people get tripped up on, distinguishing between like machine doubling and a double die. I know it seems like we're getting pretty deep into double dies, but this is literally just the surface of the topic. So to keep this on topic, I just want to show you one thing that helps kind of explain what you should see on an actual double die. And it's not actually a coin. The other day I was printing some labels for the shop and I misspelled something. Instead of wasting 3 label sheets, I just decided to stick the sheets back in there, change the letter, and print over it. When I put the label sheets back in the printer, they didn't line up properly. And it created something that really visualizes a double die very well. And as you can see on this Word document, I have the word Liberty laid out in the similar way to a Lincoln cent. I've copied and pasted it and slightly misaligned it. As you can see in some areas, we have some extra thickness that happens on the lettering. It's thicker than the example below where you can see the normal type. And we also see some really interesting and definitive notching in some of the corners of the letters. And yeah, this might be something I just made up in Microsoft Office, but a lot of times that's kind of what double double dies look like. It's not going to look like a shelf coming off of the letter, it's going to look like a separate letter. And a lot of times you can clearly tell that by some notching in the corners of the letters. Whereas machine doubling will spread from pretty much every portion of that particular letter that's being spread, a true double die will look like it either has two of the same feature or like that feature is strongly distorted but not disturbed. And one last thing to mention about double dies that's crucial to understand, since it's the die itself that's doubled and all of the coins struck by that die look the same, that's why double dies can be attributed catalog numbers. And we can distinguish double die obverse number 1 for a particular year from double die obverse number 2, or getting into those cherry pickers reference numbers FS 101 versus FS 102, and so on and so forth for however many are known in that particular year. And although figuring out which double die you have can be an ordeal, it can also help you tell the difference between knowing whether you have a $1 double die or a $1,000 double die. Since we're 2 weeks away from the end of the year, I'll have a lot more coming up next year on double dies in particular, but it's really important to know the difference between a double struck coin, a double die coin, and all of the different types of doubling that happen on coins. Not all doubling is created equal, and it's definitely not valued equally. If you learned something today about different types of doubling that's found on coins, I would greatly appreciate a like. And as I said, there's a lot more to talk about on this topic, so if you want to see more videos like this on double dies, or the upcoming video I have on spotting fake coins, which is taking a little bit longer to edit than I anticipated, sorry for the wait, be sure to hit the subscribe and notifications buttons below so you'll be notified when I upload new content. Thanks for watching and see you next time.